Welcome back to the channel, guys. It is Mike, and this is the Variety Show. And today we are about to embark on a journey through cinematic history. We're going to talk about the beginning of Hollywood and the movie industry till the silent film era and to Avengers Endgame now and beyond. And joining me on this journey is my uncle Trey and his son Deuce. What up?
What up? What
Hey,
up? What up?
hey, what's up, everybody?
So, yeah, Trey, it was you that pretty much brought this idea out. And I thought it was a great idea because I love movies. I guess everybody on this call right now love movies, I can say. And yeah, we're going to talk about the silent movie era in the very first video. We're going to talk about the silent movie era. We're going to talk about movies. We're going to put emphasis on movies such as like Birth of a Nation, and we're gonna talk about blackface, which is pretty much white people painting their face black to portray African Americans.
And the term portray African Americans, you're being quite nice, but we'll get into that in a few.
Okay, so let's start with the early stages with some film studios. So pretty much, we're not going to talk about like the creation of cameras and stuff like that. We are going to go in depth into some forms of cinematography, but this is all credited by Thomas Edison and one of his students that created the kinetogram and the kinetic scope. It pretty much is your first motion picture stuff. In the cinematograph came out, and so on and so forth. So we had some,
Yeah, and just keeping in mind that motion pictures are derivative of what happened even before that with the live performances. You could take it back to even the Greco-Roman era where you had the theaters that people performed on, and we know what Shakespeare did, and this happened in multiple cultures where you have people who were performing and acting out plays, which would be kind of an early form of the movies that we look at now. That's just kind of the basis. And as you said, Edison and his friend, or student, I should say, they were the ones to build that kinetic scope. Yep, you're correct. So, I mean, that's just kind of the basis, and that's probably where some of the ideas for motion pictures came from, as far as the content of the movies.
Okay. And we about to talk about the first film studios that took place. So pretty much famous players, Lasky Corporation, which eventually became Paramount Pictures, Lowe's Inc., and First International Pictures. Those were the first to ever have studios. And then for powerful movie silent era figures came together to start their own film studio in 1919. Two directors, Charles Chapman, W.D. Griffin, which we'll definitely talk about later. Two stars, Douglas Fairbanks and Mary Pickford, founded
United Artists, yeah.
Untitled Artists in 1924.
Yeah, and they were married. They were a married couple. Both of them were actresses, actor and an actress as well.
Yep. And then soon later, Lowe's Inc., Goodwin Pictures, and Lloyd B. Mayer's Productions joined together to create Metro Goldwyn Mayer, which is MGM.
Yeah, we know it better as MGM now.
MGM Green.
Yep.
All right. Trivia question for y'all. Do you know how much a price for a movie ticket was back in the silent movie era?
I mean, first and foremost, we talking about the silent movie era. We talking about the 1920s. You were making between $6,000 and $8,000 a year. You know, if you made $5 a day at the assembly line in Ford,
it's probably about like
so I can imagine probably 15 cents.
5 to 10 cents.
Oh, I was a little bit off. It couldn't have been that. I knew it had to be quite cheap.
Deuce just said 50 cent. Like chips not even 50 cent no more, man.
They texting for tips now.
Hey, you could have got 10 people in for what you was trying to charge, Deuce. For
So
real.
So the movie industry changed with someone named Thomas Inc. He was originally a failed actor, just like W.D. Griffin. He directed his first film in 1910. His biggest impact on film was pretty much he said, okay, the way y'all doing it is kind of redundant. We're gonna do it this way. We're gonna pretty much take the lessons from mass production to film. So originally, most films
So
was
break that down, Mikey.
huh?
So break that down. What's the thought process of mass production that W.D. Griffin brought over into motion pictures? Because at this time, this is relatively new. You know, a lot of people haven't really heard of it. You may, if you have money to go to the movie, probably the wealthy and upper middle class, you would go. But what was he trying to do with mass production to bring it over to film? Since he felt it was stagnated.
So an example of mass production is kind of like what General Motors did, and pretty much with the assembly line. So
So you're
what
talking about
he did,
what Henry Ford did, okay, and the
yeah,
Durant brothers.
yeah, my bad, Henry Ford. So originally, this is how they were making movies. Originally, most films was overseen by the cameraman. He would work with the actors, write the script, and do. He was pretty much over all of it. But
Mm-hmm.
Thomas came in and said, "No, we're gonna have screenwriters, directors, editors,
Mm-hmm.
producers, and a studio head."
So
Hey,
for Deuce, and we're not being funny for real. If I was a teenager watching a movie right now, all the credits we see at the end, where you looking at who was the over stunts, who was over lighting, who was the gaffer, who was this, who was that. All those different portions or different positions that make up a movie. You're saying D.W. Griffin was the one that put that in the effect, correct?
yep. So
Okay,
he
just
so
so they'll have some kind of basis to understand. That's why you have all these different people. All right.
Okay, do I need to explain what a screenwriter, director, like I'm pretty
Nah,
sure we
nah,
know.
nah. Well, we gotta realize, they teenagers. So, and even if not, some people aren't that deep in the movies. Now they have a context, which is they understand that hey, all these different people. Because if you ever look at a movie set, like why you need all these different people? Now they know where it came from. So now it makes sense. As far as the
So
different
as
positions, that's just like going in the plant. We don't care what everybody do. We just know multiple people get together and they end up making a car or a truck.
Yep. So a screenwriter is a person that makes the script and the story. Director makes creative decisions on set and work with the actors. The editors assemble the footage. Producers supervise the project to the final cut. And the studio head oversees everything.
Okay.
So eventually, a man named Mark Sennett founded some early legends of of films, such as the Keystone Cops, Fatty Archbuckle, Gloria Swatson, and W.C. Fields, and the legend Charlie Chaplin. Now we about to talk about Charlie Chaplin. Trey, who is Charlie Chaplin?
Charlie Chaplin was one of those early actors in the 1920s. Uh, Silent film guy, but he made a lot of money because his thing was comedy. He wasn't into some of the other genres that Fairbanks and some of the other ones was into. So Charlie Chaplin probably was your first original comedian of quote unquote motion pictures.
Yeah, so he's like your Jim
Most
Carrey
notable.
in the silent era.
Yeah, he made his money off of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Dudes, you ever heard of Charlie Chaplin?
Yeah, little dude, he got that little monkey mustache or whatever.
Yeah, they still use that a lot doing Halloween. You see people with that little I forgot the term to use,
look
but
like a fake
yeah,
Hitler stash.
yep.
yeah, and he actually one of his most popular movies was The Great Dictator, which he pretty
Wow.
much made a
Oh
parody out
wow.
of Hitler.
That's
So This is so
Hmm.
he was famous for his Trump persona.
Yeah.
That's pretty much, huh?
No, I'm agreeing with you. I think something else you said to bring out, Mikey, is the Keystone Cops. That's the terminology growing up I used to hear my dad talk about. Now, even though he was born way after this, he probably learned about the Keystone Cops from my grandfather because you would see like those idiot cops. That's basically what they were with that slapstick humor.
Yep.
So I would figure eventually, like there's movies like The Naked Gun. Uh, that whole little trilogy was kind of that same type of slapstick humor going on. Kind of a goofy. Leslie Nielsen is playing a goofy cop in the whole nine. So that's kind of derivative of the Keystone Cops. That was good that you brought that up.
Yep. So let's talk about how big Charlie Chaplin was. This dude started 14. He was in 14 short films with a big deal by a Chicago-based studio. I believe it's called SSE. I'm not sure if I'm not sure if that's right. So he pretty much signed in 1915, and he was making 10,000 per week
Think
with
about that.
studio
Hold on. What
company.
year did he
He
sign?
was making 10,000 per week.
10,000 per week in 1915.
So let's
And
think
people were
about
making
that. You making
8,000 a year.
10,000 per week right now. That's 40,000 a month. You making roughly half a mil. Man,
And
that's a
he
lot of
also,
money. That's decent money for now. So imagine what that was like back then.
oh, I'm not finished
He
with it.
was,
He made 150,000 with a bonus signing, which is equivalent to 3.5 million today.
Yeah, that's what I was looking
International
at.
star.
Man.
Yeah,
he was getting paid.
yeah, he
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
definitely the best actor during the silent era, the most well-known actor. And he also co-founded at the age of 30 in 1919 Untitled Artists, which pretty much the reason why he founded because he wanted greater control over his movies.
And you know something, I don't know if y'all thought about this. To watch a silent movie is kind of a different thing. There's no communication. You can't understand what they're saying. You have to totally understand where the director, screenwriter, or all of their
Yeah,
intentions. You had to understand where they're going in order for you really to
yeah,
be into a movie like that. You do.
yeah.
You
Cause
just sitting there for multiple minutes watching the screen, just watching something occur, and you can't hear. You can't, all the things we enjoy now, you can't do it. And this dude was getting paid $500,000 back in 1915 to do it.
Yep. With classic films such as if his very first film was The Kid, then The Gold Rush, City Lights, and the very
Yeah.
controversial Great Dictator.
right.
Like most Hollywood stars, their career pretty much fall short, and he was in legal problems and he was blacklisted, and
Why
because
was he
of
blacklisted?
socialist sympathy.
Why was he blacklisted?
Socialist sympathy, something like that.
Oh, he was a socialist sympathizer. So
Yep.
that means that they thought that he was. When did he get blacklisted? What year?
It doesn't say with the research,
Hmm.
but it was pretty much after when he was. It was after the Great Dictator, and like pretty much during those times.
Yeah, if you was a socialist, you were anti-democracy. So you're in America, you sympathizing with socialism, which is what Russia would become, what already it became because of what's called the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. So if you're empathizing with them, hey, you making a bad name for yourself. It would be very similar today if you were to talk against the LGBTQ community. Say something about them, or say something insensitive about people with special needs, something at that level. Even though it's a tad bit different, but if you make the wrong comment about the wrong topic, that might be your career.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's how his career ended, making millions to now nothing. So, and he
Yeah.
wasn't the huh?
No, go ahead.
he wasn't the only artist that career was over. Remember Fatty? His name was Fatty Arbuckle. He was, which is kind of prevalent in today's Hollywood. So he was pretty much the Harvey Weinstein
Oh,
um,
Oh, all
during
right
his
then.
I heard you dudes like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that
yeah.
ain't good.
And he's responsible, and I think a woman died on his hands too. Yep, a woman died on his hands, and he was taken to court.
Uh-huh.
He won the court, he won the case, but his career was never the same.
Mm-hmm. It's odd, but to go back to what you just said about the I forgot his name that quickly. I apologize. The actor who was blacklisted for being a socialist. He was making pretty much the equivalent of millions of dollars in 1915, and eventually he ended up losing it all. There's a black entertainer you may have heard of. Deuce, your generation may have heard of him. His name is Bill Bojangles.
Yeah, I
His
know
real
who
name
that
was
is.
Bill Robinson, and Bill Robinson made a lot of money. As a matter of fact, he was a millionaire in the 1930s, but he ended up dying penniless. So what you were talking about, Mikey, that's happened with other actors as well, even with black actors as well. Bill Bojangles Robinson was he was a dancer, and of course we'll talk about how he had to dance back then. But he made over $1 million and ended up losing it all before he died.
Yep.
Mm.
So also the public received some of these movies very negatively, like the silent film movies,
Mm-hmm.
because movies are now starting to threaten public morality by promoting materialism and sexual license. Which sexual license is it? Is that just sex in movies? I've never heard of sexual license.
Mm.
Well, let me give you a little bit of context. People are starting to, you said in these silent films, criticize materialism, right?
Yep.
So, do y'all know? Dudes, you may have heard this because you're in high school now taking U.S. history. Have you heard what's the term used for the 1920s in America?
Was it the Roaring Twenties?
Yes, it was called the Roaring Twenties because affluency or money came about during this time. Henry Ford bringing people up here, you getting paid $5 a day, they making money. There was a large economic boom uh, in the GDP. Uh, the Roaring Twenties saw a lot of money being made legally and
Mm-hmm.
illegally because they also had some called prohibition. So you had legal money being made by working, for the big three and other corporations, because the assembly line has been produced, and then you also had illegal money made by people like, I know y'all have heard the name Al Capone before. Al
Yeah.
Capone making money because they bootlegging, they selling illegal liquor. One of the U.S. president's dad used to bootleg. By the name of John Kennedy's dad was a bootlegger. So the 20s, it was a lot of materialism because there was a lot of money going around.
Right.
And also, I think because like a lot of movies was being sexual because this was also right around the time the porn industry got big too.
Mm.
Wow.
So of course Hollywood was making movies, so were they. So
I mean,
yeah,
hey, it's motion pictures. I mean, some things never change.
thanks Thomas Edison.
Hey, I'll drop it on you like this. Y'all have heard of Pompeii, the city in Italy that was destroyed by the volcano, right? They made a movie about it not too long ago.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when they went to Pompeii afterwards, they found in over 100 houses in Pompeii explicit artwork of the pornographic nature. So we talking about first century AD, around not too long after Jesus died. That's what they had up on their walls. So, hey, this is something people was doing and making pictures out of. So, hey, they got a chance to make a motion picture out of it. Why not? That's what they figured.
Porn industry, a $3 billion industry.
I'm surprised that's it. To be honest with you.
Yeah. So next, now we did mention WBD. Wait,
Let's go ahead and talk about him. Yeah, let's
yeah,
go ahead and talk about him.
I know this is down your alley. So pretty much, he put up a very controversial movie
You
called
being nice again, Mikey. You being real nice.
I wonder what
called
it
Birth.
was.
But before we talk about that, hit that like button.
Yeah, go.
Go ahead and do that. Make it blue. Make it blue.
And make sure you touch that like button. And when you touch it, make sure you let everybody else know, hey, come on, view this, and make sure you hit the like button. Go ahead and subscribe too.
Yeah. So Trey, tell us about A Birth of a Nation.
Well, I'm from Georgia, and when I was around 14, 15, we went on a field trip to a place called Stone Mountain, Georgia. In Stone Mountain, I was young and just didn't understand at that time. There was a carving in Stone Mountain of it looked like men on a horse. And then I come to find out the carving on Stone Mountain is Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee was who? He was the leader of the during the Civil War of the Confederates. Why is that important? This is useless information. No, it's not. One of the largest Ku Klux Klan rallies that ever happened in Stone Mountain, Georgia. And why did it happen? Due to a certain movie that had then provided a level of, I guess I would say, interest in joining the Ku Klux Klan again. It was called Birth of a Nation. Yeah, it was the D.W. Griffin film where he puts a nice, I would say, twisted version of what happened during the Civil War, Reconstruction, all the way up to that time in the South. It was a 3-hour movie. 3-hour movie. 3 hours of
13 minutes.
watching. Yeah, 3 hours and 15 minutes of just watching and not hearing nothing. And this movie was so influential, the president, Woodrow Wilson, even had it showed at the White House. So that shows you how much pull this movie had. And this movie right here was very instrumental in what's the word I'm looking for? Resurrecting the Ku Klux Klan in the South.
So let's talk about the production of this film. So this film had a budget of $100,000,
$1,000,
$10,000.
which is a
This
lot of money for that
was,
time.
yeah, it was the most offensive film ever made.
Oh, by
With,
far.
yeah, story by Thomas Pixel Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so pretty much explicit racism of the Civil War, Reconstruction, and the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. Major themes of this movie was the hypersexualization of black men trying to get after the white woman.
Exactly. So you're producing a
Right.
thought process that these blacks are ultra predators and they're lusting after white women. So there's kind of a propaganda component of what he was doing. The bigger issue was the Ku Klux Klan was started right after the Civil War. Nathan Bedford, these 4 guys from Tennessee who were Confederate soldiers, they had their run and was really being stomped out by that point, or really being reduced in numbers. They almost became a non-factor at that point. It wasn't as big of an issue as what it was in the 1880s. This helped regenerate them. This helped regenerate the Ku Klux Klan. And I guess the sickening thing is the president of the United States even decided to show this movie at the White House. So who else is this influencing? Not just regular civilians. If I'm showing this at the White House, who else has to be watching this?
Foreigners, the world,
Government officials.
Yeah.
So I'm showing this amongst other people. So this was just, I guess for me, is highly offensive because D.W. Griffin received so much praise and accolade to this day about his, I guess we'll call it cinematographic brilliance in this film. But the content was horrible. It would be as if Adolf Hitler created a great masterpiece of a movie and we still talk about it, even though the movie centered around him
talking negative about Jews. We wouldn't do that. So I just kind of find it hypocritical that they do that.
Yeah. And also during this time you had blackface. Deuce, what's
So
blackface?
That was where white people would like put on blackface paint with like big
mhm,
red lips and stuff, and then try to portray as a black person.
that is right. That got started from something called the minstrel shows that started in the 1800s, late 1800s. Now they have what's called a minstrel show. So these were actual black people at that time who basically they wanted you to dance a certain way. They wanted you to talk a certain way. Hey, but I'll be right there, bossa. I'm just giving you an example of how now they want you to talk as if you can't speak fluent English.
Coonery.
The dancing is just over. I mean, just overly excited. Just it captures the eye. And you like almost what's going on with this person. And then the
I
comedy
mean,
is over the top as well. You falling, you can't stand up, and other things were portrayed in this, which was you're lazy, you don't want to work, you're a thief, and going back to what Mikey said, you're lusting after white women. So that's what happened with minstrel shows. And now, once we get to film, now it's portrayed as blackface as well.
Yeah, man. That'll
yeah,
do it. That'll do it for this for the very first episode of I don't know what I'm gonna call it. The history of film, I guess that's what I'm gonna call
Yeah,
this.
we call it the background, the foundation of the film. Deuce, is there anything that you
yeah.
want to know? We for real. We want to make sure younger viewers are heard. Is there anything you want to know about what we discussed today?
Well, no, it's not that I really want to know. It's just like for the blackface, I just feel like they kind of overdid it. Cause I mean, black
Mm-hmm.
people, there's no way they were acting that out of order. Like they was just portraying like a whole bunch of false stuff. That's my opinion at least. But that's just how I feel on that topic.
Understood. My man,
Oh,
Mike,
also we forgot about another very influential silent film that came out during this time, Nosferatu.
oh
Oh
yeah,
yeah, the horror movie.
yes. So you see the origin of different genres starting to come on too. You know, horror. Even though I mean,
Yeah,
you also talking about the birth of really the pornographic industry, and then we know the mainstream motion pictures. You had your comedy, your slapstick comedy with the Keystone Cops, and you had Chaplin, and you had your dramas as well. So
yeah.
Yep. And before we end this movie, we're gonna go roll person by person. What's your favorite movie?
from that era,
No, no, not from this era. I'm talking about just
you
all
said
time.
okay.
All time.
That's something I gotta ask. That's something I gotta get a Ouija board and ask my great grandmother or grandfather what's their favorite movie during this time.
Hey, you just watched
Yeah.
D.W. Griffin, man. I thought you might. No, I'm messing with you. I'm
No,
leaving.
that's not like out. Like I did not think it was 3 hours and 13 minutes. That was a very long investment and very disturbing.
Hey,
And
man, God bless you. That's all I'm gonna say. God bless
yeah,
you. So, Deuce, let's start with you. What's your favorite movie, Deuce?
Oh no, y'all gonna start with me. Uh, I don't know. It gotta be either one of the Fridays or Boys in the Hood.
Okay. Got you.
Yeah.
For me, it's kind of I think I'm gonna lean. Deuce, you probably know. I'm leaning towards. Is one of them is a western, and another one is actually a war movie. It's almost a tie between the good, the bad, and the ugly with Clint Eastwood, and the movie Glory with Matthew Broderick and Denzel Washington.
Yeah.
Trey, how high is the Lion King on your list, man? The 2019 Lion King movie.
About as high as a credit card laying flat in the ditch. That's about as high. That's how high it was. You know, I think that was trash. They disrespected what happened with the original Lion King.
Yeah.
That's just
Hey,
me.
Luis, what's the name? Got a payday. The one, who was the voice actor of Simba?
Beyonce. No, it wasn't Beyonce.
Who was it?
I don't know. I don't
I
know.
know
Um,
Jason Weaver was Simba in the first one. Jason
Not
Weaver
Right
oh,
there.
talked for Simba in the first one.
James Earl
Oh,
Jones. At least James,
James
yeah,
Earl Jones was what's his name?
Mufasa.
no,
Mufasa. Yeah.
Yeah, at
I know
least he got a
Robert. No, Childish Gambino was the voice of Simba.
at least he got a payday.
In the new one, you're right.
Yeah,
In
Childish
the
Gambino was
original,
it.
one, it was Jason Weaver, but Childish Gambino was Simba in this new one. And
Yeah,
Mikey's right. It was James Earl Jones who talked for Darth Vader as well, who talked for Mufasa in the first one.
right.
Yeah. But my favorite movie, even though it's not a movie, it was originally a TV special, but it was converted into a movie. You could buy it on DVD, and that's how I saw it. Was the Temptations group? Was the Temptations movie?
Oh. Yeah, I had a feeling you was gonna say that. I know you like that movie. I don't have no problem with it. It's just there's something about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And well, I like the spaghetti westerns. And then, hey, to get Denzel and Morgan Freeman together, an early young Denzel, Matthew Broderick, at his time, they did a real good reenactment of probably one of the most important battles of the Civil War, as far as blacks entering the war.
Yeah.
Yep. And so this will do it for this video. The next video we will be talking about the early 30s to the 40s to the 50s, where we
They
got
actually started talking in movies. Yay!
where we got
Yeah.
movies like like King Kong,
Yeah. Little action.
The Wizard of
Yeah.
Oz. The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. But let's not
It's a
forget,
Wonderful Life.
but we also got some movies like the Bill Bojangles movies, The Littlest Rebel with Shirley Temple. We got Hattie McDaniel. So we still have some issues going on too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about that next time. Thanks, guys. Like,
Hey,
comment,
hit that like
subscribe.
button, y'all. Hit that
Y'all
like
later.
button.
Hit the like button.
Why you sound so dry? Yeah, and we out. Peace.
All right, later.